So ironically, good politics is always good policy turns out to be good politics. And I think we need a little bit more good policy. Mr. President, I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
And in the Senate today, we'll have debate on reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank. The bank's charter expires at the end of this month. And over in the House, Majority Leader Cantor and Assistant Minority Leader Hoyer came to an agreement on the bank, which passed overwhelmingly in the House last week. And we should also see 2 judicial nominations considered at 4:30 today here in the Senate. George Russell III of Maryland to be a U.S. District Court Judge for Maryland, and John Tharp, Jr. of Illinois for the Northern District of that state. Votes on those nominations and a vote to whether to proceed with the Export-Import Bank legislation at 5:30.
President.
Senator from Wisconsin.
I ask unanimous consent to enter into a colloquy with my Republican colleagues for up to 30 minutes.
Senator, the Senate is in the midst of a quorum call.
I ask unanimous consent to come out of the quorum call.
Without objection.
Now I ask consent to enter into colloquy with my Republican colleagues for up to 30 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. By now, Mr. President, it really should come as no surprise that the Senate has not passed a budget in over 3 years. I believe the exact day count is 1,111 days. Now, certainly when I go back to Wisconsin, I think this is probably true of my colleagues here joining me today, the people of Wisconsin, I think the people of America, want us to work together to start solving our debt and deficit issue. Since I've been here, the Republicans have fulfilled the responsibility to show what the plan is for stabilizing our debt and deficit. The House has passed a budget the last 2 years, but the Democrats have not here in the Senate. It's because they simply refuse to be held accountable, and that's a real shame. I realize that the American public wants us to work with each other, but my suggestion would be the first individuals that need to work with each other, the first compromise that needs to be done is with our Democratic colleagues in this chamber. They have 53 members. They only need 51 to pass a budget. They need to get together. They need to work together. They need to hammer out a compromise and pass a budget. The way then we get together and compromise the entire process is the House budget would be presented with the Senate budget into a conference, and then we'd have some process for being able to compromise. That's the basic minimum of what I think needs to be done here at the Senate. One point I'd like to make is that President Obama has made a number of promises during his administration, and the one I'd like to talk about right now is on February 23rd of 2009, in opening remarks to the Fiscal Responsibility Summit, the President stated, and I quote, "Today I am pledging to cut the deficit we inherited in half by the end of my first term in office. This will not be easy. It will require us to make difficult decisions and face challenges we've long neglected. But I refuse to leave our children with a debt that they cannot repay, and that means taking responsibility right now in this administration for getting our spending under control." Now, Mr. President, I'd like to point out that when he made those remarks, the most recent estimate for what the deficit would be in fiscal year 2009 was put forward by the CBO on January 7th, 2009, and they were estimating the deficit for that year would be $1.186 trillion, $1.2 trillion rounded up. Now, half of that amount would be $593 billion. That's the promise President Obama made to this nation in terms of the work he would put in and what he would deliver to our nation in terms of deficit control. The facts are far different. In 2009, largely because of the very partisan stimulus package the President passed, the deficit wasn't $1.2 trillion, it was $1.4 trillion. That was followed in 2010 by $1.29 trillion. And then in fiscal 2011, $1.3 trillion. And the latest CBO estimate for our deficit for this year will be $1.253 trillion, almost $1.3 trillion. That's double what the President promised he would be delivering to the American people in terms of deficit control. Now, moving forward, this President in his budget is projecting increasing our debt from about $15.6 trillion right now to over $25 trillion. But I'm not sure that's particularly believable. The other quote I'd like to point out of President Obama's is that on September 26, 2011, in remarks at a DNC fundraiser in San Diego, when he was trying to sell his Americans Job Act, he said the following, and I quote, "What I've said is this is a very simple principle that everybody should understand. Warren Buffett's secretary shouldn't pay a lower tax rate than Warren Buffett. A teacher making $50,000 a year or a firefighter making $50,000 a year or $60,000 shouldn't be paying a higher tax rate than somebody making $50 million a year. And that basic principle of fairness if applied to our tax code, could raise enough money that not only do we pay for our jobs bill, and here's the key quote, but we would also stabilize our debt and deficits for the next decade. Now, Mr. President, I don't know what you'd call that last statement, but whatever you'd call it, I think it would be called a doozy. I think the President of the United States has a very serious responsibility not to mislead the American public. I think that statement was a gross violation of that duty. I have one chart here, pretty simple one. It shows the four-year deficit figures from the last three administrations, basically. Bush's first four-year administration, $0.8 trillion total deficit in 4 years. His second 4 years, $1.2 trillion in total deficit spending. This president will accumulate $5.3 trillion in deficit spending in his 4 years. And the Buffett rule, that tax that President Obama said would stabilize our debt and deficit, 4 years of that would be $20 billion. I realize the members up there or the people in the gallery probably can't see that line. It exists. It's obviously not enough to stabilize our debt and deficit. And again, I think the President of the United States has an obligation, a duty, not to mislead the American public, and that's exactly what he did in this case. So I think with that, Senator Corker, I think you've been a real leader on this issue in terms of being a real hawk and trying to get our nation's fiscal house in order. I wonder if you have any comments.
I thank the Senator, and I appreciate the gathering, Senator from Texas and Senator from Wyoming. I would just say that, yes, I mean, look, I think the number one responsibility that we have in the United States Senate is to pass a budget and to lay out to the American people how we're going to spend the resources that come in. The last time we passed a budget, as you mentioned, was 1,111 days ago. We spent over $10 trillion of the U.S. taxpayers' money during that time. To be honest, I have quit voting for any spending bills, until we come to a point in time where we at least lay out to the American people how much of their money we're going to spend and what we're going to spend it on. Again, each year with $3.5 to $3.6 trillion being spent by a federal government with no plan. I am embarrassed for this body, candidly, that we haven't even tried to take up a budget. I know that the committee itself began to take one up just a few weeks ago, and the chairman was asked not to do it because it made no sense to do a budget at this time. Thankfully, the parliamentarian ruled in this body that it was appropriate for us to take up a budget. And again, I just can't imagine a greater shirking of our responsibilities than to lay out to the American people exactly where their dollars are going. Mr. President, I want to say that what worries me most is this is the greatest transference of wealth from these pages, from their generation to my generation, that has existed in modern history in this country. I mean, there's a tremendous transference of wealth as we do not deal with the issues of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. What we're doing is actually piling up tremendous amounts of indebtedness just so the people of America will like us more as politicians, as we don't make difficult decisions and we don't have to wrestle with the fiscal issues that we have as a nation. Mr. President, this is a thing that really is ailing Western democracies around the world. I mean, we're seeing this play out, obviously, in Europe right now as citizens are rising up in protest over having to deal with the tough issues of the day. And there's been this grand bargain in Western democracies, ours being one, where politicians have given citizens what they wish without asking them to pay for it. And I think we all understand that this is up now. I mean, we have a dilemma in this nation. We have a dilemma around the world right now because of our inability to deal with this issue. And so in the process, what we're doing is basically transferring wealth from this generation to my generation. It is absolute generational theft, and I think speaks to the greatest vulnerability we have as a nation. If you speak to all of our national security analysts, You speak to anybody in this body, and we know that our greatest threat is not what's happening in China. It's not what's happening in Iran. It's not what's happening in Syria. But the greatest threat to this nation is we ourselves. And for some reason, this body has chosen to totally shirk our responsibilities as it relates to dealing with this issue. I know that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have the opportunity to really vote on some budget resolutions. I agree with the senator from Wisconsin. I would hope there would at least be some way that this body could come together and present a budget for debate. If not, I know there's going to be some alternatives that are put forth. But again, this is the greatest threat to our nation, and that is our inability to show the kind of discipline that we need to show as a nation. Our country's greatness is dissipating as we continue to shuffle this under the rug and not deal with it. And I do hope that the United States Senate at some point soon will rise up and deal with the major responsibilities that we have in this nation, and that is putting our country on sound footing. And let me just close with this. I don't think there's anything that we can do that would cause our economy to lift off more quickly than for people in this nation and people around the world to know that we actually have dealt with pro-growth tax reform and entitlement reform and passing longer-term budgets and discretionary caps that would put this nation on sound footing. I believe the economy would take off. I hope that's what we rise to do before the end of this year. And, Mr. President, I yield the floor to my colleague and great friend from Texas or Wyoming, whichever chooses to speak.
Well, I thank the Senator from Tennessee, and Mr. President, I would just say that, it's interesting because there are 4 of us on the floor right now. Senator from Wisconsin, the Senator from Tennessee, the Senator from Wyoming, and myself. We have one thing in common. Every one of us have run a business. Every one of us were in business before we came to the United States Senate. So we know when we're talking about new taxes, which is all we hear from the administration, that new taxes are not going to help this economy grow because our small businesses are scared to death out there. I know because I've heard the senator from Tennessee and the senator from Wisconsin who came straight out of a business who ran for the United States Senate because he was so frustrated in business. We know that small business people out there today are looking at the increased taxes that are already in place with the Obamacare added taxes and surtaxes that have already been passed by the Democrats in Congress without one single Republican vote. Those taxes are already on board to increase. Plus, you've got the fines that they're facing if they don't have the government-prescribed plan for the Obama health care plan. They're going to have to pay fines on top of the surtaxes to pay for the bill that they're not going to be able to use. And then they're looking at the regulations that are coming out of this administration, and they're saying, and Congress wants to spend another $1 trillion this year into deficits, because every one of us knows that we are looking at hitting the debt ceiling again over $16 trillion this fall, because this administration will not even consider lower taxes and lower spending levels. So I look at all of us on the floor right now who have been in business, who've run a business, who have met that payroll, who have met the regulatory environment, and I think, why on earth don't we listen to the small business people of this country in this body and do what they do every year? Pass a budget. The senator from Wyoming is here, and I would just ask if he has an idea of when the last time the United States Senate passed a budget resolution?
Well, I would tell my colleague from Texas, who has been a leader in this fight, asking for a budget, demanding a budget, that it is now today, as of today, been 1,111 days since the Senate has passed a budget in spite of the law that says they must do so. This body must do so by April 15th of each year. So April 15th came, and April 15th went this year as it had last year and the year before, and yet there is no budget. So I look to the leadership of the senator from Texas, who knows how the hardworking families of her state and the hardworking families of my state resent the fact that Washington refuses to be accountable. The Democrats in this body refuse to be accountable to the American people. The American people, all they're asking for, in my opinion, is value for their money. They want to make sure that the money that they send to Washington is being spent effectively, efficiently, and they're actually getting value for their money. And I assume that's what that my colleague is hearing from Texas as well.
Well, of course. And, you know, the spending issue is very interesting, and I look to my colleague from Tennessee, who is really one of the deficit hawks in the United States Senate, and I am looking at the statistics that are being put out about the entitlement spending. The entitlement spending today is over 50% of our spending every year. Mandatory spending. It is going to be, in 10 years, it is going to be 74% of the spending in this country. Now, I would just ask my friend from Tennessee, because he has really been pure on this issue, I have to say, being the deficit hawk that he is, I would ask him, how would we be able to solve the spending problem of this country without addressing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid mandatory spending that will be at 74% of the budget in 10 years if we go at this rate?
Well, I know the senator from Texas spends a tremendous amount of time on appropriations issues and knows a great deal about this, and she, more than me, knows that if you wiped out all discretionary spending, which this year is going to be capped at $1.047 trillion, you still wouldn't wipe out the budget. So what the senator is saying is absolutely true. I mean, we could do away with all defense spending, all educational spending, all research and development, and you still could not cause our budget to not have a deficit. Let me just give a stat, and I talk about this a lot back home, and I'm so glad you've given me this opportunity. The average American family in America today earns $43,500. The average American worker earns $43,500 today. So in a two-wage earner family, that's $87,000. Over their lifetime, in today's dollars, that family will pay into the Medicare program $119,000, and that includes the part that the employer pays on their behalf. So between what they pay in and the employer, you've been an employer before, and you know about paying the Medicare taxes into the system, that combined amount of money for the average American family today is $119,000 in today's dollars. That same family, if they retired, would take out of the system over their lifetime $357,000. Now think about that. And that's in today's dollars again. $119,000 going into Medicare on their behalf, $357,000 coming out of Medicare. I think most people in this body, even people who haven't been in business, realize you cannot make that up with volume. Yet volume's on the way. There are 20 million more Americans over this next decade. They're going to be part of that same formula, 119 in, 357 going out. I've been quoting these stats every quarter, and the numbers get further and further apart every quarter.
The senator from Tennessee, because he brought this up, not only is it so clear that if there's more going out than coming back in, what would you say to the fact that we also, not we, because you and myself and the senator from Wyoming all voted against the Obama health care bill, but interestingly, with those numbers that you just quoted, that bill cuts $500 million more out of Medicare to pay for that overdraft that you're talking about. And you were talking about a generational change? Oh, my goodness.
$529 billion to be exact. And the senator from Wyoming has pointed out over and over and over the sustainable growth rate issue that we have, meaning that every year we come into this cliff with physicians like he is and used to practice on a daily basis. So instead of dealing with that issue over a decade, which would have cost about $300 billion, instead we swept that issue under the rug and we took the full $529 billion to help create this entitlement, which I think most people in this body know there's no way that this bill is going to work as it laid out, that the costs are going to be substantially more, because in a free enterprise system, people act on their own behalf, in their own self-interest. The subsidies are so high for families up to $88,000 a year. The penalty is so low that what's going to happen is we're going to have thousands and actually millions and millions and millions of people that are out on this program far beyond the projections that have been laid out. So anyway, I think, let me just, because we're talking about Social Security and Medicare, all of us want it to be solvent. And that's what we want to see. We want to make sure that Medicare and Social Security is here for generations down the road. But we all know that the Medicare trustee has said it's going to be insolvent by the year 2024. One way to deal with it is to put your head in the sand and just let it happen after you're gone. Let it happen to the good citizens of this country. Another solution is to say, hey, this is a big ship. We need to get turning in a little bit different direction so, again, these young people who are sitting in front of us don't have the tab.
I'm so pleased that the senator from Tennessee brought that up, because there is a way for us to at least fix one of the entitlements, and that is Social Security, in a relatively painless way. Now, it's going to have a few changes that some people won't like, but it could be so gradual if we do it now that we would raise the age just 3 months a year. So in the bill that I've proposed, and there are others that are equally as good, although none of them have been taken up, and it would just say if you're 58 years old, you wouldn't have any change at all. If you're 57, you would retire 3 months later. So it's very gradual. If you do that and you adjust the cost of living increase, you would not have to raise any Social Security taxes. You would not cut the core benefits at all, and you could gradually ease into a system that will be solvent for 75 years so that our elderly who need Social Security will have it there. And that's on the table now. But what is happening in Congress, and where is the leadership from the White House? Nothing. Nothing. And I'm going to ask the senator from Wyoming, because he is one of the 2 actual physicians in the United States Senate. He knows more about the Obama health care system, and when you look at what the Obama health care system is doing to Medicare, cutting it $500 billion, and then this Social Security issue that I addressed, the Medicare overall issue that you addressed, the senator from Tennessee, and what the senator from Wisconsin, who has the real on-hands most recent small business experience, showed in his charts. I would just ask the senator from Wyoming, the real doctor in this body, what is going to happen if the Supreme Court doesn't save America by throwing out the individual mandate on constitutional grounds, and we actually have the implementation of the Obamacare with the taxes and fines that are going to come in on January 1 of next year if we don't act? Where are we going to be in health care in this country?
Well, I would tell my friend and colleague from Texas, who is a wonderful student of this as well, that this health care law is bad for patients, it's bad for providers, the doctors and the nurses who take care of those patients, and it is terrible for taxpayers. We're going to get stuck footing the bill. So it's not a surprise that this administration doesn't want to come to the Senate, is embarrassed to come to the Senate with a budget, because they know that the American people would be so much offended by the irresponsibility of, and the nature of such a budget. And that's the situation we find ourselves in now. And as both my colleagues have said, that with the Medicare, they took $500 billion from Medicare, not to save Medicare, not to strengthen Medicare, but to start a whole new government program for someone else, which is why when I travel the state of Wyoming and talk to seniors, they say, we don't like this health care law. It's why the health care law is more unpopular today than it was the day it was passed. But I do notice our colleague from Wisconsin has a new chart that I'm trying to read from here, and I'm just going to ask if he could share what is up on that chart so that everyone gets a chance to see and hear the explanation.
Well, I think, Senator from Wyoming, yeah, I came prepared with charts, and it's actually a number of things that have been already mentioned by my colleagues I'm ready for. We're talking about the true cost of the health care law. You know, when this was passed, and I actually grossed these figures up because they actually netted out the savings of Medicare with new spending in Medicare. The way Obamacare was originally going to be paid for was about $1.3 trillion to cover about $1.1 trillion in outlays. And that was split up basically two ways, about $590 billion in taxes, fees, and penalties, and then $665 billion in reductions in Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicare Advantage. Now, we have not imposed the $208 billion of the doc fix, the sustainable growth rate formulas, because even Washington realized that if you reduce payment to providers, there will be less access for seniors. So I guess I don't have any reason to believe that those cuts in Medicare will actually occur. Now, if we move the budgetary window forward to the time frame when Obamacare truly kicks in, because initially, by the way, you had 10 years of revenue and only 6 years of outlays. But really, you only had 4 years of full outlays. If you move the budget window forward, the true cost of Obamacare over a 10-year window is $2.4 trillion, and that's a very minimal estimate. That's very conservative. If you don't impose Medicare cuts and you only grow the taxes, fees, and penalties about $816 billion, that leaves a $1.6 trillion deficit risk over 10 years. And we're talking about these deficits now that for 4 years have been 1.4, 1.3, 1.3, $1.3 trillion. We're trying to close a $1.3 trillion deficit with about $1 trillion worth of discretionary spending. Because the other graph I had, and this plays into what part of the earlier conversation was, back in the 60s, 68% of expenditures were appropriated. They were under some control here in Congress. 32% were the mandatory programs and interest. Currently, about 36% of government expenditures are appropriated, and 64% are basically off budget on automatic pilot. And then, as the senator from Texas pointed out, 10 years forward, only about 25% of our federal budget will be appropriated to be discretionary spending. Everything else is on automatic pilot. That's simply not sustainable. The last graph I want to put up, and we haven't talked about this yet, here's what I really fear. If you take a look at the average borrowing cost of the United States from 1970 through 1999, when we were a far more creditworthy nation, back then our debt-to-GDP ratio ranged from about 40% to 67%. Our average borrowing cost as a nation was 5.3%. Over the last 3 years, from 2010 to 2012, our average borrowing cost has been 1.5% because we've held rates artificially low. Now, if we just revert to that mean, that would actually be a 3.8% differential applied to our debt. That would be $600 to $700 billion per year in additional interest expense. Compare that to $1 trillion worth of discretionary spending. That would totally wipe out the defense budget, for example. Or if you maintain the defense budget, it would wipe out all the discretionary spending. That's what we need to be concerned about. That's the day of reckoning I'm concerned about, is when creditors from around the world take a look at the United States and say, you know what, I'm not going to loan you any more money. Or what's more likely to occur is they'll say, I'll loan you money, but at a far higher interest rate. I know the senator from Tennessee is fully aware of these types of figures. Do you have any comments on that, or any concluding comments?
I would say to the senator from Wisconsin, number one, that's an outstanding chart, and I like the one before it. even better. But the fact is that it's so easily known. Its illumination is so bright that we have a major fiscal issue in this country, and we're watching how that can play out and be so destructive to people's lives right now in Europe as they try to deal with these issues. Our nation is so large that, and the economy is so big, there will not be anyone to come to our rescue like we're seeing play out in some of these other countries. And for us to see what's happening, to know that we're participating in this, we're participating in this because spending here in America is on autopilot. We're going to spend $45 to $47 trillion of the American people's money over the next decade. We have not a single document in place to lay out how that's going to take place. I just think it's incredibly irresponsible. It would be an embarrassment to me if I had some ability to run this place and to know that we had no budget. And yet we know the calamity that is going to occur if we do not deal with this issue. We understand it full well, and we're doing nothing about it. Instead, we're dealing with all kinds of issues here that are about elections, and can one side make the other side look bad, and is this going to make a tough vote for somebody else, instead of dealing with our #1 responsibility. So I'm hoping that somehow at least 60 folks in this body will be willing to pass a budget to then create a conference between the House and Senate so we can take a major step towards living up to our financial obligations as a country. And I thank you so much for organizing this today. And with that, I'm going to yield the floor. Someone else may want to speak.
Sure. I guess, Senator from Wyoming, you're standing up. It looks like you might have another concluding comment.
Well, I just want to, Mr. President, I just want to thank my colleagues who are here today sharing their time and their insight. They have a lot of insight because they've run businesses. They've worked to actually meet a budget, live within the budget, have dealt with government regulations. And then the senator from Texas was talking about these regulations. They're burdensome, they're expensive, they're time-consuming, hard to budget when you don't know what to expect. And that's what the American people who create jobs and who work jobs, and need some predictability, some certainty, so that they can make wise decisions. And when you have a Congress led by the Democrats in the Senate who do not pass a budget, the predictability isn't there, the certainty isn't there, there is so much confusion and uncertainty that people have a hard time making the longer-term decisions. And I know to my colleague from Wisconsin that that's what I saw in my medical office, and as I talked to my colleagues, and I know you had the same situation in Wisconsin. So I wanted to just thank my colleague from Wisconsin as well as colleagues from Texas and from Tennessee for their leadership and their continued efforts to try to get the Democrats in this body, in this administration, to pass a budget which by law they are mandated to do, and yet even today, now we're at day, 1,111 days without a budget, and to me that is inexcusable. So.
Well, I appreciate those comments. I'll just conclude. You know, there really are two plans on the table right now. One is from the House Republicans. It actually passed the chamber. Republicans were willing to put, their votes to a budget. Republicans are willing to be held accountable. And of course, the other plan would be the President's budget, which last year his budget lost in this body 0 to 97, and his current budget lost in the House 0 to 414. So I guess you can say that's a plan. It doesn't sound like a particularly serious plan. So I guess I would, again, join my colleagues, and I want to thank senators from Texas and Wyoming and Tennessee for joining me here. And I would just join them in asking this body to please, exercise your responsibility, own up to your duty, and let's pass a budget. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor, and no announcements of the quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
And just ending here on the floor of the Senate, a colloquy between 4 senators talking about debt and deficit reduction. And earlier today we heard speeches from Senator Kyle on jobs and the economy and Senator Feinstein, and some debate on reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank. The bank's charter expires at the end of the month. In less than half an hour, 2 judicial nominations will be considered, one for George Russell III of Maryland to be a U.S. District Court judge for Maryland, and then John Tharp, Jr. of Illinois for the Northern District of the state. Votes on those 2 nominations and a vote on whether to proceed with the Export-Import Bank legislation will be held at 5:30.
Senator from Arkansas.
I ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, my colleague from Arkansas and I would like 10 minutes maximum, I think, to